Oh, I hope you can't hear that plane. I read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and just for me, I think she's getting better as a writer with every single book. She's pushing herself, she's trying new things, and I really appreciated this insight into her contemporary romance style. There are a lot of things that are very typical of Ali Hazelwood in this book. It is focused in science. It is a woman who is a scientist on her own. And in this case, our male of interest isn't a scientist, and that's a whole other drama. But their names are Rue and Eli, and they meet on a dating app but end up in this kind of workplace romance situationship. I love them. I think that these two have such a great connection with each other. Watching them fight their falling, really watching Rue fight the falling, and Eli just face planting into his feelings for her was so fun and cathartic. You felt for these two humans. They have their own baggage, they have their own drama. They brought it with them, they didn't try to hide it. Something that made their relationship really fun, unique, and vulnerable for me is that they were vulnerable with each other. One of the things that they do is they each share stories of past trauma or experiences. And because of their history separately, they can look at these stories that the other person is telling them without judgment or comparison or anything. They just let the other tell the story and sit in those feelings. And I think there's something really important about that. To be able to sit in the feelings of vulnerability with someone is really a gift. And I loved that we got to see that. Something else that I think is growing is her ability to write realistic intimacy. Many of her characters in past stories have dealt with some sort of asexuality in their preference and their experience or lack thereof. In this case, Rue talks about how she's experienced sex, what she likes and what she doesn't. This is really Rue's first foray into a partner that you engage with multiple times. And something we see is Eli learning her body and being able to satisfy her in the way that she likes and build upon that knowledge every single time they're together. And he also respects all the boundaries that she puts up. They have a really good conversation about her preference not to have penetrative sex. There's no trauma there. She states it, but she doesn't have an orgasm during penetrative sex. And so she doesn't really find the point. She doesn't feel like it's a good thing. All of her experiences with past partners have either been, oh, it becomes a goal, something they must achieve, and they won't stop until she does, and therefore she fakes an orgasm to get it over with, or they don't care and they don't try any other method of having her achieve orgasm, which is what she wants from her sexual encounters. That might not be your goal, but it is Rue's goal. It is that release from climax. This book really tugged on my heart in a way that other books of hers haven't. It is a darker tone. It's not dark. It's not dark. We don't even hit morally gray. There's no morally gray, but it isn't light and fluffy. So if you really wish that you'd stayed in that light and fluffy of Ali Hazelwood's early stuff, I think Love in the Brain is probably the best example of it. This is leaning heavier. It's that taste that we got in Love theoretically comes into play pretty much this entire book. It is that heavier feeling of emotion, of stakes, of life experience. But it makes me so much more excited for everything else that she has to come. She's got 2 books coming out, I think an audiobook in the fall and then a sports romance in the winter. And I love watching authors push themselves and grow and evolve. Ali Hazelwood is doing a fantastic job of that, in my opinion. If you thought maybe her earlier books were too light and fluffy, this might be the Ali Hazelwood that hooks you. What is with all of these low-flying planes? Isabel and the Rogue is the second book in the Luna Sisters series by Liana de la Rosa. This book starts 2 years after Anna Maria and the Fox. Isabel and Gabby are still out in society, waiting with bated breath for news of what's happening back in Mexico. This story centers around Isabel, the middle sister, and Sirius Dawson, Fox's best friend. He plays a part in the first book, but I kind of wish we'd gotten some of those scenes from the first book back in this one to remind us of how they met. They refer to their first meeting a number of times, and I had to go back to the first book and reference it. This is a really lovely historical romance. So the Luna sisters are from Mexico. They are both Spanish and native Mexican, which is a really lovely combination. Anna talked about how her cultural background affected her and her sisters. Serious. That name forever is associated with one thing for me. He was in the army, he was injured, he came back, and he basically works as a spy for the British government. And the way that he works is he seduces married women and widows in order to glean information that their spouses or late husbands or family members may have about potential French sympathizers in the war against Napoleon. So his reputation as a second son, as a bit of a rogue, is well earned, but it's done in service to the crown as opposed to because he is a rogue in his own right. Something I never believe is the changing of feelings for someone. The, oh, I've never noticed how beautiful you were, and then suddenly it's not years have gone by and I haven't seen you. It's not, oh, you went through puberty. I've been around you this whole time and I just never noticed. I don't know why that always leaves a bit of a blah feeling in my experience, but I'm going to go with it. Isabel has spent the past 2 years spying on members of the Ton during parties. She'll sneak into studies and try and glean information about potential movements of the French to pass along to her uncle and her family back in Mexico. She is very disheartened. It's been 2 years, more than that, and she hasn't found anything. Sirius finally catches on to what she's doing and decides he's going to help her / help himself. They're both aiming for information from the same man. And because of that, they start to connect, they talk. First, it's how could you do this? And then let me help you get better at it. Their attraction grows, they start to express it towards one another. I like stories in historical fiction where a woman claims ownership over her own virginity. I think so often it's precious. And Isabel doesn't throw it away lightly. In the moment, he says, do you understand what I'm taking from you? And her response is, you can't take what is freely given. I love that. It shows an understanding of her own innate value, but also the value of having this experience with someone of her choosing, someone that means something to her. I don't love a third act breakup. I don't love a third act breakup when people just won't talk about their feelings. The grand gesture that Sirius makes at the end of this book really spoke to me. I think it's great when a grand gesture is made in service of a partner. Quite often what we see is women giving something up to be with a man. That doesn't happen in this book. I don't need to ruin the ending for you. Their intimacy was really well written. I enjoyed it a lot from Anna Maria and the Fox. That was something that surprised me with how proper the first bit of the book was until Anna and Fox got married, and then whew, all bets were off. And the flirt between Isabel and Sirius starts a lot earlier. So we get kind of that naughty, dirty talk speak that I liked, and I think that Liana de la Rosa did a great job with earlier in this story. There's one more Luna sister left, Gabby. She is the outspoken one of this trio. I am so excited to see what's coming for her. Plié by A.H. Cunningham was a book that I was really searching for. I want to expand my reading. This is a Black love story that centers around kink, and I haven't found them, or my algorithm is hiding them from me. And so the fact that I got to this book through Stimulate, oh man, I'm so excited to click on all the things that are recommended to me from this book. We have Aisha and Knox. Aisha owns a dance studio. Knox's daughter, Trinity, goes to that dance studio, and they have a very antagonistic relationship. In the dance world, Knox doesn't like the way that she runs things. He doesn't feel like it's good enough. He doesn't understand why Trinity is obsessed with Aisha, and they just rub each other the wrong way in that sphere. However, Aisha is connected to this kink club that caters to kinksters of color. And in the past, she has been a sub for hire. She is a submissive. and her dance studio is going through a bit of a rough patch. So she's decided to go back to being a sub for hire. And she gets hired to help train this new Dom. And of course, this Dom is Knox. They're both masked. They don't officially know, but they basically know who it is. And the connection that they have in that kink space leaks into the real world. They basically take the connection that they have in kink and decide to explore it outside of this. I loved it. I thought the conversations around kink were just absolutely incredible, spot on, so great, especially because Knox is newer to kink and the relationship is being established. So what Aisha is doing is training him on what questions to ask and how to handle things. He's learning what questions he'll want to know, how to express his own limits and what to do with a sub and the limits he's given, how to create a scene for a sub, how to work with a sub to create a scene, how to do it on his own. That part was super, super fun. The play that they engaged in was amazing. Things that I didn't love were the miscommunication BS. That's never my favorite. There was fighting that wasn't fair. There was a lot of secret keeping. It felt kind of icky in that respect to me. I'm like, I don't love this kind of thing. Oddly, his nickname of baby doll to her didn't bother me. Didn't bother me at all because it came out of a really fun conversation. Normally, anything that involves baby throws me and makes me like cover my eyes. No, thank you. But baby doll, for some reason, I was totally okay with. There's also a lot of queer positivity in this book. That's something that I have been looking for. I've been really looking for a book that just throws a ton of kink in there and is written by and for people of color. I think it's just because of who I am in the algorithm, but you got to fight that. Make choices, take action to try and break the pattern that those algorithms, that those recommendations are going to give you. So if you're looking for a book that is high kink, high spice, is set up for sequels, there are two friends of Aisha's that are going to come along later if you like Single Dad. This has a lot going for it, and I'm really excited to see what A.H. Cunningham is going to bring to the table next. So I wasn't originally planning on reading Dark Restraint by Katee Robert right when it came out, but last minute I decided to drive up to Milwaukee to get it signed. I figured I should read the book if I'm going to go see her. This book is probably the least connected to the rest of the world in the Dark Olympus series. Here's what I mean by that. Ariadne and Asterion, also called the Minotaur, are the two people in this relationship. It's the only one where neither one of them mentions a history of queerness. Pretty much everyone else in these stories has some sort of queer experience in the story itself or history, but this is probably her most straightforward MF's tale in the Dark Olympus series. Ariadne and the Minotaur, Asterion, are not part of the 13. They're not part of that core group of Olympians. And basically the whole book is them trying to escape all the drama to leave. Not to ruin it, but they do. And so there isn't even a what will they do in the next book. They're gone. I expect never to see them again, which is fine. But it was really interesting watching them fight this system. This was also one of the most plot-heavy books in the Dark Olympus series, at least for me. So many layers of this tale, of this drama, are unraveling. I don't mean personally between Ariadne and Asterion, the Minotaur. I think I'm going to say Minotaur just because that rolls off my tongue better. In the world of Olympus, so much of that plotting, that fight to come, happens or starts to spiral here in this book. The actual plot between the two of them is Ariadne and the Minotaur have been drawn to each other since they were early teenagers, about 13 years old, I think, for both of them. The Minotaur was pseudo-adopted by Ariadne's father. They finally consummate their love and she gets pregnant. In the last book, Midnight Ruin, she sought refuge in the lower city to get an abortion. Love that. I really loved the handling of her abortion in these two tales. It is her decision. She doesn't want to bring a child into the situation she's currently in. She honestly doesn't tell Asterion, and I didn't love that as a human. I think you should talk to your partner, but it's her decision. And his reaction to the knowledge of her abortion is just phenomenal. I think it's how every person should react because it's her body, her choice, and he is totally fine with that. We never see the emotional fallout from that procedure. She mentions it, she knows it's going to happen, but we don't see it on the page. I'd be curious to see a short story of her coming to terms, or maybe even her and the Minotaur in the future trying for kids and having that come up again. This is definitely a morally gray situation in their romance. Ariadne has fled, she's left, and the Minotaur basically hunts her down, stalks her, breaks into apartments, murders a lot of guards to get to her. She's fine with it. I mean, she's not fine with it, but he's hers and she's his in a almost Heathcliff kind of way, but it feels less self-destructive than that relationship. Even though this is a book about Ariadne and the Minotaur, so many other characters came into this tale that it doesn't feel only like this book. I loved getting to know Dionysus more. I loved getting to see Hera's plotting. Hermes, oh man, Hermes, I cannot wait. She is book 10. That is going to be absolutely bonkers. And Poseidon comes in. We haven't seen much of Poseidon in any of these tales, but Icarus, Ariadne's brother, and Poseidon are going to be the next story that comes out. Sweet Obsession. Yes, I already know the title. Yes, I've already pre-ordered it. There are some authors where you just do. This is not a book that you can read without having read the rest of the series. It won't make sense, even if you know the myth. The Neon God series really does need to be read in order, because as much as these books are about individual couples, they take place within this larger plot that develops outside of their relationships. And each time we get the story, something important is happening. So you can't really skip them. I really loved it. I loved getting to meet her. Maybe I'll do a video on that. And yeah, can't wait for the next one. This is kind of effed up. I had totally forgotten that I have an e-copy of Wicked Pursuit by Katee Robert because I participated in the Black Rose auction Kickstarter. She mentioned the story at her book signing, and I went, oh yeah, I think I have that. Looked it up on my phone, realized I do have it. I do have the ebook, and quite literally started it while waiting in line to get my book signed at that event. This is a dark stalker romance. It is set in the world-ish of wicked villains. Honestly, reading this first made me very intrigued to read the rest of these tales. I thought these 6 tales were completely separate from what the authors were doing in their own world, but Katee's wasn't. And the other stories are interconnected to the Black Rose auction, which you don't need to really know about it. This tale takes place in Carver City, where wicked villains exists. This centers around Ruby, who is the daughter of Belle, Gaetan, and the Beast from The Beast, one of the wicked villain tales. I will say, if you are fans of some of those darker romances where there is stalking, where there is some real effed up stuff, you will like this story. I am not gonna lie, in the back of my brain, I went, I think this is how it's going to turn out. And it kind of did, but I was not really expecting it. I haven't read all of Katee Roberts' books, and I do wonder if some of her other tales, the ones not Wicked Villains, I don't want to mention what it is because I don't want to ruin it for anyone because it is a bit of a surprise. There's a lot of play. There's a lot of kink. It's a novella. It's a short tale. It's very quick, very intriguing, very spicy, and very violent. If that's your jam, if you feel like, I've read Neon Gods, I've read Wicked Villains, I just wish there were a little more violence in these tales. I wish we were a little bit darker. I think this would be good for you. It definitely crosses some boundaries that are not present in many of her other books. The other authors in the Black Rose auction all have stories as well. I was going to wait until I got the physical books to read, but since I have all the ebooks, you might see one sprinkled in from time to time.